Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Craig Moody. I'm managing partner of Verdis Group here in Omaha, Nebraska. We're a sustainability consulting firm doing work across the country to help communities and organizations become more resilient. I am pleased as punch to be joined today by Rebecca Ryan. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Craig Moody. How you doing?
So, so I'm great. Just first, quick for the few of you that don't know Rebecca. Rebecca and I think we met probably 12 years ago or so when I was on the Young Professionals Council in Omaha, and you came to speak here. And actually I have your book from back then, right?
Oh my God. Is it
And
Throwback Thursday? What just happened
it
here?
is signed and everything. See that? And I'll
That's
connect
still
it.
my signature.
It's good that it hasn't changed. So, Rebecca, you're a futurist and economist, and I'm going to read from your website about your team just for a moment, and I'll connect it back to your book. Quote, "We are futurists, economists, trend trackers, logicians, nerds, and good timers. We work with clients who share our commitment to leave the world better for future generations," which I can absolutely relate to. And the reason
You
I
are
wanted
so
to
good
read
at reading, Craig.
well, I got logicians probably wrong multiple times now, but I wanted to read it because as I opened your book today, I
Yeah.
pulled out the placeholder or my bookmark, and it is a quote, and I'm going to read it to you because it's probably hard to read. And it says, quote, "No one's really going to be free until nerd persecution ends." From Revenge of the Nerds, right? I think it was maybe Gilbert. I'm not sure why I had that in your book, but I did.
Well, we talk a lot about how important weirdos are.
Yeah, and yeah, I can relate to you being a weirdo. That's great.
And vice versa, sir.
All right, so let's get to work. So you're a futurist. Tell us what that means. What does that mean?
I think, yeah, I know, because people say, like, do you have a crystal ball in your backpack? Not every day. No, but seriously, so historians, right, they sort of document the past, and journalists document what's happening today. And as futurists, we're trying to document what could happen in the future. And professional futurists like me use specific processes to bring a lot of rigor to this. Unfortunately, just about anybody can call themselves a futurist.
Sure.
So you may have your watchers and listeners may have run across people who say they're futurists, and you're like, what is
Mhm.
this really? But I'm a professional futurist. I changed my name in my Zoom. Did you see? I put APF. I'm one of about 300 people who have the APF
Oh,
designation from the
cool.
Association of Professional Futurists. So it's a
Hmm.
really cool, fun profession. We help people understand what is likely to happen in the future and how these clients can create the futures that they want.
Indeed, and you've done some work with the Chamber of Commerce in Omaha and some of their vision work, and you're doing some work with the Omaha Public Power District. I'm on the board, and I've learned a lot from you recently, and I really enjoy the work that you're doing. So relate the work that you do in the futurist work to the pandemic. I mean, how is it shaping how you're approaching the challenges that we have today? Is it altering your thinking at all, or tell us how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, so a couple quick thoughts. One is, when you think about events that are absolutely certain, so on a low certainty to high certainty scale,
Sure.
and events that are going to have a low to high impact, things like pandemics are what many people call black swans, right? Things that in hindsight, we should have anticipated this. So as a futurist, I kind of love black swan events because they help everybody understand that the future is not just a linear projection of what is.
Sure.
These kinds of disruptions are very helpful to knock people out of their reverie where they think they know what the future will be. So in that way, I love them.
Yeah.
As it relates to coronavirus and this pandemic, what's happening is time feels very dilated. So many people have recognized this in their own lives. A friend said to me last week, "Is it Wednesday or is it July?" And I just loved that question because
Yeah.
that is what this time dilation has felt like in a very
Yeah.
human, at a human level. But It has also caused great leaps forward in some things, like, hey, we
Mhm.
all now know that we can work remotely if we must. It has caused us to really have pixelation on how bad the digital divide is among our children, and
Yeah.
how we cannot actually deliver digital learning well, either because the technology's there, teachers don't know how to do it, and our educational systems are not as adaptive as we had maybe hoped.
Right.
And in other ways, it's helping us see that we're actually really lagging in a lot of things, like our public health investments, which have been shrunk and shrunk and
Yeah.
shrunk.
Right.
That is now coming home to roost. So the pandemic has done many good things for many systems, and it has shown where, well, the metaphor I like to use is this pandemic has been like an X-ray on society, and it really
Yeah.
shows us where the broken bits are.
Yeah, well, that's a great metaphor. I really hope that we as a society are actually looking at the X-ray, right?
Mhm.
And examining, yes, we have to stay focused and figure out how we're going to get through this without, some serious catastrophic damage to our health, to the economy. But to your point, it's a disruption and it's an opportunity to recreate all the systems that are completely broken today. So I hope that we're staring that X-ray in the face and really asking ourselves the hard questions. To that end, the climate crisis is something that we work on quite a bit, and so I guess I'm kind of wondering, from your standpoint, what are the lessons that we should be learning and thinking about and applying to how we're working towards addressing and mitigating the climate crisis?
Yeah. So in the United States, I think the approach we have to take because of the current political situation, and everything may change in November and then again in the midterms after that election, this is a
Right.
fluid situation. But it is a moment, not just for those of us fighting climate crisis, but for all of us who have felt like we're trying to push water up a hill,
Right.
whether that's in education or healthcare reform. It is our moment, I think, to show not just the near term and long term impacts, but to start to think about rebuilding in a way that has a lot of co benefits.
Yeah.
So that to me would be like job number one, is if you're trying to figure out how to do this sustainability thing differently in your community, how can you also link it to how we deliver education? How can you link it to how we make sure that people aren't hungry? How can you link it to transportation, long-term transportation
Sure.
solutions? So co-benefit is like my big A number one word.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's great, and there are any number of connections that we can make between all of those systems, right? Like you mentioned a few: transportation, education, healthcare, systemic racism. Like these dots are all connected in really meaningful ways, and so hopefully people are taking a look at all of those systems at once and trying to figure out how we can achieve the co-benefits, so to speak. That's
Yep.
great. In your mind, then, thinking through that lens, let's take a slight step down in specificity. Are there specific things that you have in mind as it relates to strategies that we really like? If we miss the boat on X, we're going to have missed a really big opportunity. Is there anything that comes to mind from your standpoint, from a strategy standpoint, we need to really get after?
So this is going to seem like I'm not pulling it down a notch, but I
That's all
promise
right.
to do this.
Okay.
The way that we in America think about economic growth, we
Hmm.
have known for a long time that shit is busted there. We have
Yeah.
absolutely known this because when we look at measures of GDP, or we look at unemployment measures, or we're looking at like, oh, housing, our housing values are going up. Those things all seem to be pointed up and to the right in a direction that like everybody gets a Twitter page about, like, oh,
Sure.
we're fantastic. And then we
Yeah.
have these secondary, or I shouldn't even say secondary effects, we have these other symptoms in our community that are also getting worse:
Hmm.
homelessness,
Right.
homeless children,
Right.
um, structural racism, inequity. And we're like, how can both be true? Well, both can be true because we've been lying to ourselves for a while about the one basket of benefits and papering over the other. And
Yeah.
that is coming home to roost now. So,
Sure.
one of the things that I think we need to get right about, and I don't think it actually has to be that difficult, is how we think about what economic growth is.
Yeah.
Ben Bernanke's been talking about this since 2012. The OECD is working on regional initiatives to address this. But we have to, in futuring, I often say, what are we moving from and what are we moving towards? And on this, in this way, what I think we must get right is we must move from thinking that the economy drives how we treat the planet and how we
Yes.
treat people.
Right.
We need to move to the economy is in service to the planet,
Sure.
is in
Yeah.
service to how we treat people. You know, to move from GDP thinking and towards well-being thinking. That feels like a huge shift, but it feels more possible than ever before because we're getting this triple threat of public health, economic recession, and structural racism all coming to an inflection point in this moment.
Yeah, all at once. So I can't help but wonder, and we're going to go a little bit over time, but I think that's okay. I'm sure our viewers are going to be happy with it. But I can't help but wonder about what life was like pre-pandemic and some of the things that we were seeing. And,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll point to what I think are some good indicators that that shift was starting to happen.
Mm-hmm.
The Business Roundtable, as an example, was redefining what a company is for. It's not just simply in service to its owners and making them profit. It was in service to creating a better community. So I think we were already seeing some of that in motion, and I'm hopeful that maybe this will just sort of accelerate that transition. I don't know if that's possible or not, but I'd like to think that that's kind of where we're headed.
Let me riff on that for just a second. I
Sure.
do think that the pandemic has subsumed the climate crisis narrative in the very immediate term. But we're coming on what many people are saying will be the worst hurricane season we've had in a long, long time.
Right.
And there's nothing like another emergency to recapture the headline. And I'm being somewhat glib there, but it's also true in this distraction economy that we live in. That is just true. But here's the other thing that I would say, and this is going to be, I think, the through thread for what you guys are doing there and what cities are facing is prior to the pandemic. I think like 47% of cities, I don't have the exact right number, but 47%
Mhm.
of cities said that climate change was the existential threat to their
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah.
So that's not going away. That
Right.
has always been there. We've just looked over here because this has now caught our attention.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Well, we're going to leave it there. Rebecca, I enjoy every single moment that I spend with you, and I really appreciate you carving out some time to talk with us about what the future is going to be like. So thank you very much.
You're welcome very much. Keep up the good work, Craig.
Likewise. Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.